talks about how they'll be sad about leaving the graves of their fathers, but kind of brushes it off. But as we know, Christians and both the Indians were very spiritual, but spiritual in different ways. Were the Indians more spiritual towards their land and their ancestors than the Christians?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, what would the Indians? How would they feel about leaving their land? Because did they believe that the gods directed them to where they were?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, now for the ancestor side of it, with Christians, with their spirituality, the bones of their ancestors don't believe in anything. But for Indians, they do. So, when they would be leaving these Indians, if they believed that if they didn't take them with them, then they would haunt them. So, and they also took wisdom from these bones. So, is it even comparable for Jackson to compare the Christians and the Indians in that matter? No. Good job. So, do y'all have anything else that y'all saw that was different from the text and the picture? All right, so let's move on to what we got from the picture that we didn't get from the text. I want to start off this conversation with the conditions. We didn't really see a lot of the conditions in the text that Andrew Jackson is giving to Congress. What conditions that do you see in this picture?
Starvation.
Starvation. Right. I see that here. You can see it with the horses. You can see their ribs. What else?
Cold.
Cold. What tells you that it's cold?
They wrapped up and then the trees don't have food or anything.
Right. So the trees don't have leaves on it. Does the grass look dead? And something that I saw was right here, this horse. Y'all notice what's coming out of his nose? Well, when it's like cold, you know, when you breathe,
Yeah.
the air, you can see the air, you can see the horse's air, so that shows that it's cold. Y'all see anything else about the conditions?
Most of them are walking.
They're walking, right. What about the clothes? Knowing that it's cold, what do you notice about the clothes?
They have big blankets on.
Do you see, certain people do, yes. Do you see a lack of clothing? Like right here?
I thought there was a thing.
No, you see he has, that's the legs. See, a lot of people, they don't have a lot of clothing. So would that tell you that tells you something else about the conditions? They're walking in the cold. In many cases, you can't see this in the picture, but they were also barefoot in most cases. Not a lot of people had shoes, so they're walking with not a lot of clothes and barefoot in the cold. Do y'all see anything else about the conditions that stands out to you?
They also don't really have like a lot of stuff with them.
Right, they don't have a
It's
lot of
just
stuff.
kind of them.
Okay, moving on from the conditions, what else? Do you see anything else that stands out to y'all in this that was different from the text?
The guards in the back.
The guards. Yeah, the white men with the guns. This is something else I wanted to bring up about the text too. In many cases, Jackson brings up in the text that the natives went on their own will. Like they had free will and they were doing this because they wanted to. Does the picture show that with the guards?
No, it seems like they're like taking somewhere, escorting.
Right. It wouldn't be needed. You wouldn't need to have these men with guns guarding them. Do y'all see anything else?
They're crying.
Crime? Yes. I noticed this. I don't know if you can really tell in this picture, but this man, it looks like he's covering his mouth with like a cloth. What would that say to y'all?
You see?
He's sick. Good. So does that with the kind of goes back with the conditions, but it shows it's cold. People are sick. They're starving, and they don't have the means to take care of themselves on this journey. What does that say to y'all?
They were forced.
Yes. What else?
They didn't really care for them.
Yes. Does this? It doesn't show it, but would it imply that there was a lot of death on this journey?
Yeah, because of starvation.
Right.
Well,
Because the conditions weren't favorable. Absolutely. What about the children?
They're walking or getting food.
Right. Do you see? Was there really anything brought up about children?
no.
Right, why do y'all think this is? Why do you think that Jackson didn't bring up children in his text?
Because most of them die.
Possibly. What about the fact that in the text what did he refer to them as in the text, the natives as a whole? Savages, right. What do you think of when you hear the term savage?
Roof.
Right, so they kind of looked at them in an inhumane way. Would you argue that when you bring children into the picture, when you're trying to make a case, that it would make the people of Congress sympathize a little bit more? So that's how I interpreted it. That's why you didn't bring it up. Also, I want to go back on the savages. Who exactly was he referring to? What tribes was he referring to when he referred to the savages?
Wasn't it the Chickasaw or something?
Mm-hmm. The five
The five
civilized tribes. What were those tribes?
Creek,
Creek,
Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole.
Right, the Creek, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Cherokee, and the Seminole.
Ed's out.
So there's something else that I noticed in this picture. Right here. What do you notice about this man?
He's on a horse.
He's dressed up.
He's on a horse.
Is he white or is he native?
Native.
Native. Is he the only native that you see in this picture who is on a horse?
Yeah.
He looks like he's more clothed than the others. And also his horse stands much taller than the other horses. Y'all see that as well?
There's another one. The lady in the blue.
Right here. But does this, what does that say to y'all? And he also looks like he's almost leading the pack.
Chief.
He's the chief. Why is it so important, do you think, that the chief is held to a higher regard and is also better taken care of than the other people?
Because he's a leader. of
He's
the
more important.
tribe.
Right. Would you think that possibly if he was taken care of and he was happy, then it would allow for the other people to be less likely for revolt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I would think. All right, so let's move on to what did we get from both? What did both say that correlate with one another? What was similar?
They were making room for the white.
Yes, absolutely. Anything else?
The tribes which occupied the country not constituting the eastern states were annihilated or have melted away. So like they're leaving.
Right, they're leaving. Anything else? Alright, so something that I picked out was you can really see the attitude that Andrew Jackson has towards the natives in both. Just with how he, with his word usage in the text, he calls the natives savages, and he also uses the term, let me find it. He says, in one of his statements, it says, enable them to pursue happiness in their own way and under their own rude institutions. That's very derogatory. He's saying that their institutions, in a sense, are lesser than what, right, like the common man, which the common man at that time was white men, which he was very much the president for white men, which is obvious in both the text and the picture. Y'all see anything else?
How about children are thousands years leave their homeland?
Yep, that's a good comparison. Yep. Alright, so let's move on. What do y'all think was more informative? Did y'all get more from the text or from the picture? The picture, tell me why.
It just showed how the Indians really felt about it, because most stuff he was saying wasn't true. It was making Indians look bad.
Okay,
And also what was left out from the picture.
okay.
That's in the picture.
The true emotions. Anything else? Would anybody argue that the text was more informative?
Cause it gave more information about what land was gonna be open once they moved and stuff.
Right.
So it talked more about the geography of it in the text than it did in the picture.
Right. What about the idea that you need both? to support one another. They would, like they both, like the idea that they both give valuable information. Like the text gives context to the picture. Without the text, you wouldn't know where they were going. They're moving. Which direction?
West.
Westward, right. And in both, you kind of get the attitudes from different sides. So you get information from Jackson's side, and you get information, this depicts more of what the Indians were feeling.